Today I'm going to be answering one of your art questions about acrylics shifting colors as they dry. Hi, I'm Lisa, the artist behind Lachri Fine Art. Today's question comes from Tony, who asks, how can one prevent acrylic from getting darkened when dried? Part of this is going to depend on the acrylics you use, and part of this is going to depend on if you're varnishing your work with a gloss finish or not. So what happens in many cases, like for me, I love Liquitex Basics. You guys know that. I like just so much. I should make a video just dedicated to why I choose those paints over like Liquitex Soft Body or Heavy Body. But with Liquitex Basics, they dry fairly flat, which is one of the main a huge reason on why I like them. It makes it easier to photograph. It makes it easier for when I use a white charcoal pencil to draw, like if I want extra fish in the painting or whatever it is. So that is my preference. Now the thing is, when you paint it and the paint is wet, the lighters are fracking through and shining, bouncing around off that wet paint in a very different way. It looks very different than when it dries. You remove that water, the color may look a little bit different. So the trick there, I put a gloss varnish on everything. Once I put a gloss varnish back on it, all my colors, everything looks as rich and vivid as it did when that paint was wet. It's as simple as the varnish in that case. Now, I have found there are a few colors, like certain colors of teal that I mix, even within Liquitex Basics, which aren't really prone to color, like actual color shifting. There are some, they just shift. I have found that where they get a little bit darker. No matter what I do, they get a bit darker. Normally, actually, the only color I really have that issue with are certain teals will darken up. I just am aware of that just from experience, and I know go ahead and mix it a little bit lighter than what I think I'm going to want that end result to be. But in that case with the teal, putting the gloss varnish over it isn't really going to fix things because that's an issue if it actually got darker. It's not that common. Most paint does not shift to that extent. Most good paint, I should say, does not shift to that extent. With teal, I've had that happen in multiple brands. It was just prone to that being a thing. I don't know the science behind why it is with that color. It's not horrible. It's just, I know what you're talking about, I guess, is what I'm saying there. And that one, I've not found a solution to other than being aware with that specific color, I want to make it go a little bit lighter because it's probably going to dry a bit darker. It's not a huge deal. And it's not a huge enough deal that like the average person who sees it is not even going to notice. You notice because you painted it and you knew what you intended, but it's not that big of a deal. Just be aware of it and go ahead and mix it a bit lighter, knowing that it's going to darken up a bit. So when I mix it lighter, I usually will add a bit of titanium white to it to make it a lighter teal. I'm going to just keep using teal as my example here because it's the one I've experienced the most with that happening. But I will mix it a little bit lighter. Now, if I mix it a little bit lighter and it ends up being too pastel, I wanted just lighter teal, but the white obviously is going to make it more pastel looking. Then I'm going to glaze the color of teal without white over it, just really thin glazes to correct that. So it's not really an issue where I can prevent it. Maybe there's a magical teal out there I just have not found that isn't going to shift at all. For me, it doesn't actually bug me. I'm not like out on a hunt for it because it's not that big of a deal. I've just learned to kind of counter that by mixing it a little lighter, knowing it's going to dry a bit darker. And it's not that big of a deal as I talk about this and people are thinking, oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. It's not that noticeable. Again, as the artist, I notice it. The average viewer is not going to walk by that and go, oh, should have mixed that a little bit lighter. Like it's not that noticeable. But the main problem that I think people have with acrylics where they'll feel that they're a bit dull. That's a complaint I see a lot, that acrylics look plasticky or they look dull. Put a varnish over it, it's gonna look good. And a high gloss varnish is my preference. I really like the Liquitex high gloss varnish. That is my favorite there. But yeah, varnishes will in most cases make your paint look again like they did when they were wet, assuming it's not those rare cases where for some reason some color wants to get like actually darker as it dries. Do you have a question you would like to submit for one of these videos? I have a link listed in the video description of where you can submit that. Have you subscribed yet? If not, I have a handy button right there. It's round, has an orange arrow going towards it. If you click on that and the bell icon, definitely click on the bell icon too for the notifications so that YouTube will let you know when I have new videos go live, which is a lot lately.